Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, welcome to the show. This is the Millennial Millionaire podcast, and I am your host, Stephen Cohen. This podcast is focused on bringing some of the wisest minds from across the globe to discuss concepts, strategies, and ideals that will lead them to be top performers in their respective industries and their lives. This show is for the millennials and millennials at heart to transcend their mindset, their health, and their income to the next level. We are so excited to have you on this journey with us. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we have another special guest. We have Erik Sexton. Erik has 2 decades in the industrial real estate industry, a real estate guru. He's the founder of the Sexton Group out here in Las Vegas. He also has a podcast. It's Commercial Real Estate Uncovered. We actually film at the same studio. He's a great guy, super charismatic. Excited to talk to him. Dude, thanks for coming on the show.
Not a problem. I rolled in a few minutes late because I had a little fender bender on the way here, but you know what? Minor accident, not a big deal. So thanks for having me.
100%, man. I mean, we were just talking, right? It's taking that ownership mentality mindset where it's like, okay, something bad happened, but maybe something worse would have happened. So reaching for that good feeling thought.
100%. My grandmother always says this, where she says, everything's an adventure. And I always thought that was kind of a crazy perspective. But she also grew up in World War II torn Europe. She likes to tell people that the part of Finland she's from is now Russia. So if she can have a positive attitude, I can about a fender bender. So
I love it, dude. Perspective. It's a good word. Erik, for those that don't know you, give us a little background, who you are, what you're about, and we'll hop into it.
Yeah, I'm Erik Sexton. I moved to Las Vegas to go to UNLV.
Running Rebel.
Yeah, running Rebel. I was just never thought of getting into commercial real estate, but like we're talking about, opportunities just open up. While I was in school or a freshman in college, I was looking for a part-time job. I met some commercial real estate brokers. Never intended for it to be a career, but I graduated college during the recession, and I was still making some money. So you can't really turn away when you've got friends graduating college and they can't get jobs and you have one. But it was really cool because I was like 19, 20, and the guy I worked for he's making a ton of money, and his whole like crew was in their early 30s, making a ton of money, driving all the cool cars and motorcycles. And I was like, all right, I think there's something to this. So I was fortunate enough to get groomed by somebody pretty good in the industry. And I told myself multiple times I was just going to be here one more year, but I've been here almost 20 years. So I figured at this point, Las Vegas is my home. It's been really fun to watch the city grow. Sports teams come here, kind of mature a little bit, different industries moving here. It's sunny all the time, which is nice.
Super nice. No state tax?
There's no state income tax. Although sometimes when I'm somewhere with a beach, I'm like, well, state income tax might work. I call it the beach tax whenever I go to like San Diego or Santa Barbara.
Yeah. Well, that's why you have all the real estate, right? To depreciate it so you can live in places like that if you want to.
That's right. Well, I'm actually licensed in California as well. So I'm with our NAI office in Southern California. So I'm actually out there quite a bit just professionally.
Okay.
And then, that's kind of my quick summary of Vegas.
It's interesting that you say that. Similar to me, not commercial real estate, but I kind of similar as well. Was looking for stuff to do. Went to college, went to a freshman at UNLV because I thought that was the way to be successful. Didn't really know what I wanted to go to school for, so I went to school for business. But similar to you, I got kind of roped into an online marketing and found a lot of people who were making a lot of money that were doing it untraditionally, and it really opened my mind to all the different ways that you can create quote unquote success away from what the majority of people. A lot of people say that you should be clear on what you want if you want to get there, but your story wasn't. It was you kind of fell into an opportunity and then you saw the value. What do you say to people, maybe younger generation that is ambitious and they want to create some type of success? Maybe they see all these people making money on social media, but they don't have a clear route of what they want to do. Is it go find a mentor in a business and study them and see if it works? Or is it just kind of follow your bliss? What's your perspective on that?
You need to seize opportunities, and you need to kind of make your own opportunities. And I think a lot of people, if they don't have an idea of what they want to do or how to network, just do something. There's business groups that are, there's EO, there's YPO, there's in my industry, we've got stuff like CCIM or SIOR. And like, if you're interested in getting in that industry, you don't need to have a plan. Like, just pick up the phone and call somebody who does it and say, hey, I'm thinking of getting into your business. Like, could I go grab a coffee with you or something? And most people who have been in the business a long time are really happy to connect with people, whether they come into the office or a Zoom call or just a phone call. So my suggestion for anybody who really doesn't have a path, like they really don't know what they want to do, or they know what they want to do, they don't know how to get there, is just start doing something. Like start calling people, sending emails. I mean, social media, people are more accessible now than ever. Instagram, LinkedIn, like use all those tools. They're free to just connect with as many people as possible and just get around people who kind of do it. Like commercial real estate, for example, I'm part of a thing called SIOR. It's the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors. It's a designation you earn. It's actually pretty tricky to get. It takes at least 4 years. And we actually do scholarships, and there's chapters all over the world. So like I was at a conference in Berlin this summer, and there were like 12 students there that were on a scholarship just by essentially applying for it. And they had to go through a process. But I guess the point is like people who've had some success are really open to giving back, and if it's just information. So just start doing something.
When the teacher is ready, the student will appear. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Yeah, I think too many people are like, how do I find a mentor? What do I got to do to find a mentor? How do I become successful? When in reality, similar to you, if you find an industry, whether it's by accidents or by design, and you get interested and you add value, chances are there's people that have been there a lot longer, that have walked those paths a lot longer than you, who if you show ambition, you show initiative, and you show commitment, chances are they'll probably take you under their wing. And whether you end up staying in that industry like you did for 20 years or not, a lot of the skills and lessons you learned potentially could be invaluable in whatever industry you go to.
Absolutely. I mean, I always reference my career because it's what I've done my entire adult life. But like being a commercial real estate broker, like we deal with business owners to help them find the location to like run their business, whether they're buying a building or renting one. So you deal with all sorts of just random industries that you wouldn't even know exist. Like I have a client who stocks and fixes vending machines on the Strip. That's all they do is run around, and one group stocks it and then the other one fixes it, and they have to go in the middle of the night. But the numbers they do, because they contract with Strip casinos, it's insane how much money they make. And I would have never thought that a vending machine does that. And now that they have like those credit card machines where you can just use your phone to tap versus needing exact change, I would have never guessed like how much money those things make. And his entire crew are like guys he met like in the construction realm. So no formal education. There's no trade school for that, or at least I don't think there is. And he just does on-site training, and his techs make pretty good money. So it's just, interesting industries no matter what you end up in.
What do you think of college? So you went to college for, was it just a year, freshman year?
No. I graduated. What do I think of college? I think it's a massive mistake if you go to some, don't clip that way. I think going to college without being intentional about what you're going to study and having debt doing it is a massive mistake. I went to, I did 2 years of high school in Montana and 2 at a prep school in outside of Santa Barbara, and every Ivy League school that exists was covered in my graduating class. I mean, Yale, Harvard, like you name it. And they have a friend that graduated from Yale. This would have probably been 2008 with like $300,000 in student debt. And I went to a school that cost a fraction of that. And 20 years later, I still keep in touch with them sometimes. They're still messing around with paying that debt off. So I think if you want to go to college, it's fine, but absolutely don't go into debt if you don't know what it's for. You graduate with a communications major from some, school that's $80,000 a year. Like that's crazy to me. A lot of my friends though, who went to, like they were intentionally, or an engineer, obviously go into medicine or law school, those you need to go to. But I think you can learn a lot from just on the job experience if you're willing to deal with a mentor.
I agree 100%. I dropped out freshman year because, similar. I was going to school for business. Thankfully, I had no money, so I was on financial aid, so I didn't get in debt. But I remember sitting there listening to my professor in my business class teaching me how to become successful or a business. But in hindsight, he was making $60,000, $70,000 a year, bless his heart. And I realized you can't teach something to someone if you're not doing it yourself. So it's better to learn from someone who has the results. And that's really where I kind of shifted my mindset to entrepreneurship. When it comes to...
Sorry, just one thing about that college thing. I think also taking your approach of how you attend college, there's some really good junior colleges where you have retired people, like they were in an industry for 20 or 30 years. And when I went to UNLV, the reason I bring this up is when I went to UNLV, I did night classes because I worked during the day. And I did a Saturday class for one semester. That was a terrible idea. But the people who were actually teaching at UNLV were in their field. And they might have been like, one guy was really high up with Bank of America. He taught a finance class. Like he was really high up with B of A. And he was a widower, so his wife had passed. His kids were out of school, so he had nothing going on after he was done working. So his class was incredible. So I think it's important to look at who's, like you said, who's teaching them. And there's a way to filter through that. And you'll find nighttime classes are kind of off the normal schedule. You'll find that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, even looking back at like high school and middle school for me, it's unfortunate. My mom was a teacher. She taught elementary school. But most of the teachers nowadays, it's unfortunate. They're underpaid and overworked, and they're not super passionate about what they're doing. And I think for people that depend on the formal education system, it's really failing a lot of people. And if you're not aware of that and you're not doing self-education and have enough resourcefulness to go on YouTube and learn certain things about what you want to become or read certain books, the path to mediocrity, I think, has never been faster for those that aren't willing to maybe think outside the box, which wasn't as common 10 years ago, but I think is a lot more common now, to make sure they don't end up in limbo because they've listened to what the system has taught them to do.
100%. I think we get caught in this kind of this revolving door of how things are supposed to be. And you need to ask yourself, like, why is this supposed to be? Like, be this way. I mean, I talk about this like in our brokerage. We've got commercial real estate agents. Most of them are commission only. And as soon as they make some money, they go buy a car and they finance it. And it drives me nuts. I'm like, you don't need this $100,000 car to sell real estate. And I was like, pay attention to the people who write checks for buildings. Like, they don't need a bank loan. They're not driving some, $100,000 car. They're driving some really modest vehicles. Now, they have some cool toys, but they don't run around or flaunt it. So I think, it really is important to take a step back and be like, why is this supposed to be the way it is? Like, people say you have to have a credit card. You're like, well, why is that? Well, it's been put in our system that debt is like the normal thing, and that's just not the case.
Coming from a real estate investor, debt, the Grant Cardones of the world, bigger pockets, people are mixed when it comes to debt, right? Some people say there's good debt and bad debt, and then you have the Dave Ramsey who is no debt. Where do you kind of fall when it comes to leverage and risk versus safety tolerance when it comes to leveraging debt?
I love this question. I'm right in the middle. I think consumer debt is a total waste of time. I'm totally on the Dave Ramsey side, which, if you don't know Dave Ramsey, he's like, if you don't have cash to pay for it, don't buy it. Obviously, there's some exceptions. If you need to go get, if you don't have the cash to buy a car, that's a big purchase. I mean, if you're new out of college, or there's circumstances where that is appropriate. But what my problem is if you can't pay cash for a $20,000 car, you better not go finance a $60,000 car. Just finance the $20,000 car and pay it off. I think I think consumer debt's really bad. Like, if you go finance, a TV at Best Buy or something. But leveraging debt for real estate, I'm not quite as aggressive as Grant Cardone, because I think people can get over their heads. And the reason I say that is I've been doing this since 2004 and 5. And before 2008, when the recession hit, I mean, I knew there was a guy at my gym who was a personal trainer. He owned 4 houses and he lost all of them. And he just told me the story of how he got approved for all these loans. So I think you need to be really cautious when you get into debt. So my quick philosophy is absolutely not a fan of consumer debt or car loans if you can avoid it. But if you're buying a house or you're investing in real estate, like carry some leverage, but maybe your loan to value ratio, be a little more conservative if you can be.
No, I love it. Interesting question for you, because me and you are kind of both in the similar space where we manage 1099, 100% commission sales reps, obviously on a different scale. We kind of fall in the middle somewhere in my sales organization, where it's like, make sure that you are investing and making sure that you're living below your means. But then on the other side of the coin, sometimes expanding your lifestyle will sometimes motivate people. It'll bring them into that new identity. It'll keep them inspired. How do you train, support, or what is your mentality when it comes to earning certain things, maybe getting that new car, maybe buying that new watch, maybe earning something that you've worked hard for, versus invest and kind of hoard your money a little bit?
Working is stressful. I mean, we were talking about it's Friday and you said, we'll get you out of here to go enjoy your Friday. I'm going back to my office, but it's because I've got a trip planned for Christmas. So I'm kind of, sacrificing my weekend. The NFR is here, so I'm going to be working through the weekend so I can leave for a couple weeks during Christmas to go enjoy some family time and do some fun stuff. But you know, as far as that, I think two things. One, if you're young and you're brand new into like the business and you have no responsibilities, maybe you're not married or you don't have kids, or it's really just you, like your overhead can be pretty reasonable and you can go buy that thing. I mean, I use this as an example. I made a commission when I was 20. It's $4,700. I took like 4,100 and some change of it and bought a Panerai watch.
Let's go.
Was that the smartest thing to do? Had I put that $4,000 in a mutual fund, you know, it'd probably be worth 20 years later, it'd be worth probably a couple $100,000. Now I say this out loud and I'm like, just invest in it. Yeah. But you know, that's that watch, that was like a near and dear story. It's a story I tell. I still have the watch. I love watches. But I think it's important to have a good mix of it, because one thing that I always give advice to people who are like in the entrepreneurial world or, you know, being in sales is get around rich people. And rich people, like rich hobbies are expensive. I've met clients hella skiing. I ride motorcycles with a group of guys that I never got invited to go with them because I didn't have a Ducati. And the minute I bought a Ducati, I was invited on these trips, and the knowledge, and if you don't know motorcycles, like that's on the more expensive realm. These 4-day trips to, you know, cross country or like weekend trips, like these guys are experienced developers, or there's a lawyer in the group, like really good brokers. The conversations that took place during those, you know, when we're stopping to get gas or at dinner, like that's better than any college class I'd ever taken. So, you know, maybe you need to spend some money to get around those people, and you need to think of it as an education versus paying, you know, X amount of dollars to sit in a college class. If you have the opportunity, maybe you need to spend some money to go on a motorcycle trip or a ski trip or whatever. Just name golf. Golf's a big one. You know, people say I can't afford that country club. Maybe you spend the money and try to get around it for a little bit. So that's always my thing is get around rich people, do rich people things, because if you're the poorest person in your group, like you only have one way to go up based on proximity. But as far as invest and hoarding, I really think it's important. If you're 25 and you do the Dave Ramsey thing and you're putting 15% of your income into a mutual fund, which you should be able to shave off 5 to 15% and invest in something really conservative, you're going to be happy you did that 20 years later. So 100%. I think you can do both. Touch
the dream.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've bought watches. I actually bought one that I'm going to go pick up tomorrow. That when they called me, you know, the dealer called me and was like, hey, we got this in if you want to come pick it up.
What is it?
It's an AP.
Nice.
It's a Royal Oak. It's a blue one.
Nice.
Blue, and I was like,
I had the white one.
But it's, you know, I wanted it, so I'm going to go get it. Would it be better to put that money into like, you know, go buy Apple stock? Probably. But I do a fine balance of things. And I think it's important that in your personal finances, you kind of try to cut wasteful things. Like even, I don't know, add up if you go, I have a Starbucks here. Like if you go to Starbucks every morning, like make some coffee at home and use that money to go buy your fancy watch instead of, you know, having a Starbucks coffee maybe. Like think that way. I think of things really like monetized. Like if I have a $5 coffee every day for a year, like how many thousands of dollars is that? If I cut that habit out, then I can, you know, I use that money to something else.
Did you always have the entrepreneurial mindset getting into college, or did you kind of fall into the idea of performance-based industry and creating wealth?
That's a good question. My dad was kind of in an, didn't end up the best, but he was kind of in an entrepreneurial world. So I don't really know. I kind of just, I really hadn't thought about it. I thought I'd probably end up working for some hotel chain or, you know, going to grad school and maybe becoming a lawyer. I didn't really have a path, but, you know, going to UNLV and saying yes to things like, you know, if you're in a fraternity or playing intramural sports, like you need to network as much as possible. Internships. I did an internship in Germany in 2008 for the largest retirement home chain in the world. I literally lived in a retirement home, like in one of the rooms on the dementia ward, because they were developing new buildings and I wanted to be on a development team in another country. And they're like, you can live here. It was weird. I mean, how many people can say they've lived in a retirement home where residents lived? And at first I was like, I'm not going to stay here. But then I realized like it was a really fancy one and like they had great food and like I could go and come as I pleased. It was a really cool experience. And I said yes to it. And I still have some friends that are in that industry, but it's because I said yes to it. And if I got there and I hated it, I could have just left. So, I mean, how many people would say yes to something like that? But, you know, again, I was in college. I wasn't 21, and I took advantage of learning how development worked in another country.
Yeah. Where's the balance between saying yes and no? Because, you know, you have a lot of people that said, hey, the more successful you get, the more things you need to say no to. But when you're starting out, to your point, right, you kind of have to say yes because you don't really have anything to kind of pick or choose what to say no to. So has that philosophy of yours changed as you got older, where now you're probably getting hit up from investments to opportunities, from events and networking? Like, you have to get a lot more selective with the things that you say no to?
Yeah, because as your career progresses and maybe you get into organizations, or maybe you become some sort of authority figure in whatever professional aspect you are, like, you're going to get invited to a lot of stuff. So you really need to take a step back. And I think important questions to ask yourself is this going to make me money? Is this going to help somebody else? And what would the third one be? Yeah, do I really want to do it? Like, if you don't want to do it and you're not going to make money off of it, you kind of need to really think, why am I going to do this? So the third one I would say is it going to help somebody? Like, it's a good question. Like, I'm leaving for Christmas for a couple of weeks. In the last 2 weeks, I had to go to LA, San Diego, and then I just got invited to a work trip to Texas like next week. So I thought I was going to be here for 2 weeks, but I can handle it. I just need to kind of, like, there are things that are going to make me money. So I'm going to stress myself out a little bit and do it. So yeah, I think the most important question is ask yourself those three things. Is it helping somebody? Is it going to make me any money? And do I really want to do it? Because I think a lot of times people get obligated to go do things just because they're invited, and then they get there and they're really not in it. So also, if it's not a hell yeah, like, just don't do it if you're not excited about it.
Yeah, I think for sure, especially for younger entrepreneurs out there, people trying to find what their craft is. There's so many different opportunities, meetings, courses, masterminds. Like, we are bogged down by so many different things out there that can distract people from doing the things that they really want to do. Yeah. The 80-20 rule, right? It's how do I get super hyper focused on the 20% of things that are going to move me closer to the 80% result that I'm trying to get. And I think saying no to certain things allows you to say yes to other things. And I think people just need to get clear. There's too much confusion out there. Erik, talk to me a little bit about commercial real estate. So I've had a couple commercial real estate guys on, mainly residential. I have 5 residential properties myself. I think everyone knows I need to invest in apartment complexes. I need to invest in multifamily. I think a lot of people know that, but to know and not to do is not to know. So walk me through your evolution of commercial real estate, how you got into it, and why you've been in it for 2 decades.
It's the people, like the people who come up with like these business ideas, and it turns out it's just like an idea, and then they start in their garage, and then they go to maybe 1,000 square foot warehouse space, and then a couple of years later they're buying a building, and next thing you know they have like 50 employees. Those people are like, they work hard, they treat their employees typically pretty good because they started from the bottom, and I love that entrepreneurial like journey. And being in the same market for as long as I have, a lot of those people started out at the same time as I did. So I was renting them, a small space, and as their business grew, they'd call me because I was the only one who'd give them the time of day. It's because I didn't have any other clients at the time. And it's really the people that like rent the space. Like, I have one client I always use as a reference. Like 12 years ago, he started his own fire sprinkler company, and the rent of being about $1,000 a month like really freaked him out. In 2019, I sold him 3 buildings. I sold him another building this year. Like, the guy's absolutely crushed it. And like, it's a cool journey. It's a cool story. But the reason I like commercial real estate versus residential is it's what I've been in. And I know there's a lot of really good residential agents, and they preach buying single family residence or apartment complexes. I don't really like dealing with the emotion of residential real estate. Even when I've bought a house for myself, you walk it, like, you can see that someone is probably like, they're not there, but there's like, somebody might have raised their kids there or something, and you're going to, rip out their memories and paint it and turn it into something else. I just think,
interesting.
And even if they rent a home from you, like, I have a residential, I have some residential stuff, and there's always a story. Like, I've had to go to the court for the eviction, and like, hearing the stories of like what's happening, and like, you try to work with people, but I just don't want to deal with that. In commercial, at least it's a business, and no one lives there. So yeah, I like the commercial side of it because it's purely, there's very little emotion in it. When you're dealing with a business owner or an investor, it's all about numbers. Maybe a little bit of a story there, so they want to know what the cap rate is, or what the price per square foot is, or is it like, what's the play, and that's it.
Yeah, what you said is super interesting. I think it's super valuable for people to hear is when someone looks at you that's been doing it for 2 decades, or really any industry, it's so easy to look at someone that's been doing it for a really long time, whether it's a residential, commercial, whatever, right? Luxury real estate agent that's closing $5 million houses. It's like, oh, they're so lucky they ran into that one client that owned 4 buildings, wherever the case is, but they don't hear the story of you grinding, making $0 or very little commission because you're helping them lease to $1,000 building, and then you build the relationship, and then 10 years later they get 6 buildings from you. So I think it's a good lesson for those that it's like you have to start from the bottom in whatever industry so you can organically be the one to build that foundation. And as you level up and do your job and do your due diligence, hopefully you've done a good enough job where people will follow you in your career, and then you can start getting some of the bigger prizes that have to do with it.
Yeah. And like, if you were going to be brand new to my industry, like I tell everybody this, get on a team, like get working with somebody who knows what the CRMs work, co-calling, like those different zonings. Like you will learn more in a year of working for them than 5 trying to figure it out your own. Like even buying a property or investing in it, like the barrier of entry is higher in commercial because it's more expensive, but there's a million different ways to figure that out. I mean, this is something I tell people, and I'm surprised how many people in my industry don't do this. I have clients that love when I invest with them. Like if they're buying a building and I'm like, hey, can I throw some money into it? Or they're like, yeah, because you're along for the ride.
Skin in the game.
Yeah. But the thing also is you're their partner at that point, and you're going to be renting it, or, if your company manages it, or regardless, like you become their partner, and they also look at you differently too at that point. And a lot of them, you don't need to be a 50% partner. Like literally I've done deals where when I first asked this question, I had a client tell me to do this. I asked if I could invest with him. I put $5,000 into a deal. I was like less than 1%, but I was still in it. And like, it did well. So like investing in it, that's another thing, is if you're a broker, you'll see how your clients who are investors operate, and they're open to answering those questions. Like if you just ask an investor, how'd you get into this? How do you structure your debt? Like how do you handle partners and that kind of stuff? And they have 2 decades of experience or whatever. So again, you're just getting around that proximity too.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I didn't even think of that until you brought it up. I mean, the amount of value and the amount of networking you've probably been able to do from your clients by just being in that space over the last 20 years. Because like you said, if you're dealing on the residential front, you're dealing with homeowners that are great people, they're family oriented, but unless you're in like the luxury space, $2, $3, $4, $5 million, the proximity that you're getting to these people it's nothing crazy, where when you're dealing with a lot of these business owners, most of them are successful in their own right to different levels. So by you being their broker, but also now being an investor, you're literally increasing your Rolodex and your proximity to super successful people. It's interesting because for those that are listening, if you can figure out a way in your respective industries or businesses to service higher level clients, and by higher level, I just mean financially, I'm sure they're all great people, it's just going to accelerate all the different areas of your business as well, because it's the whole concept of 2x is worse than 10x, right? It's a lot easier sometimes to go 10x than 2x because everyone's playing on a 2x level. So if you can focus on the 10x, which in your case is the higher quality clients, it's just going to accelerate everything you're trying to do.
Maybe not always higher quality, just maybe higher dollar amount.
Net worth.
There's some, I don't know, let's just call them not nice people in my business as well.
I believe that.
Yeah. And I mean, getting around the high worth thing too. Like I'll go to some events at residential brokerages when it's like one of the shops in town that focuses on the bigger, the bigger ticket items or the country clubs. Like there's some agents who only do like, McDonald Highlands or Southern Highlands Country Club. And the reason I go to those is if they're selling somebody a $3 or $4 million house, that person either owns some commercial real estate, or they're invested in it, or they've rented an office space for their company. And that's the other thing about that proximity is you need to learn what questions to ask as well. And like I use this, I refer a lot of deals out residential because I ask clients who are moving to town, if they're like, hey, I'm moving to town and I'm buying a building for a man cave or whatever, I always ask the question, like, did you already buy a house or did you rent one, or like, what's the deal? And I can't tell you, like, pretty often it turns into a referral fee. I got last year a referral fee off of a $3 million house in a Blue Heron home. I have another client, they're closing about a $2.5 million house that I referred out in like next week. I'm getting a referral fee off of that. And you're not going to get that in the commercial realm, but that comes back to like that proximity and networking. Like you really need to put yourself out there until you figure out what works, and then you get to start saying no to things.
Double dipping. Erik, how do you feel like you've separated yourself as the professional? Obviously, you've been doing this for a long time. Is it just reps of being in the industry for decades? Was it certain sales skills you learned? Was it certain mentorship, classes, books? Like, what do you think has separated you from the thousands of other commercial agents that maybe started when you started, but haven't been able to create the longevity in their career as you have?
The times where I have leveled up, it was really intentional. Like I came up with a really specific goal and said, I want to be a partner in a building, or this is how much I want to make this year, or I need to hire an assistant. Like when I have somebody who's been with me for about 4 years now, who's they're on a salaried role. When I first hired them, I was like, this is really expensive and I don't think I can afford this, but it turned out to be one of those things. It's something I couldn't afford, like not to do. And it's been a big help. I'm getting distracted here on the thing. Oh, you're asking me about, what separated you. I took networking super seriously, and I took the advice of one of my clients who one coffee changed the trajectory of my career. But he said, you need to do that coffee trick, which is go talk to as many people as possible, and you'll start picking up nuggets of information. Just get around people that are doing what you're trying to do. And that goes back to like the Ducati that I'm talking about. Like I did finance that because it was the recession and I didn't have any money really to go buy one, but it ended up being one of those things that was a really good decision. Classes, absolutely. Like as you were mentioning online, there's so many resources. Like you could just go on YouTube or podcasts, listen to as much of that stuff, read, absorb it, like get off of TikTok and like listen to people who have done it, because you're going to pick up these nuggets of information that will help you in a situation that you might not even know exists. So and building yourself a team, like having a team, it might not, like I have my Sexton Group team, but there's another team in my office that's the Larkin Group. His name's Erik as well. Like I have mimicked a lot of the stuff that I've done because he's super analytical. So proximity is like a big deal. So he's like, hey, I tried this. I'm like, that's a good idea. And maybe I tried it a different way. Like we powwow every once in a while. I've had a couple brokers on my podcast that have been in the business for 30 years. And like I sit down with them regularly. Like I'll call them and say, hey, what's going on? What are you working on? Did you try something new that worked? And more often than not, they'll respond. Like I got an email from a broker 2 days ago who said, hey, I'm interviewing social media companies. Like, what do you think of them? I'm like, call me and like, I'll walk you through it. So I shared with him what I've gone through and questions to ask just based off of experience. So I think more than most, I really try to learn from other people's mistakes. And I think that really has sped up my career as far as like listing bigger projects and dealing with bigger clients.
Yeah, I think everyone here is like, they know proximity is power, law of association, but not many people are super intentional about it like you are. Not many people are actually out there trying to harvest information, harvest knowledge to hopefully shorten their learning curve and shave years and years off of their career.
Another thing that some people need to ask themselves is like, what else can I do to move forward in this step? I always ask myself with this deal, like if somebody says I need to think about it, like, well, why do you have to think about it? Like, do you not have all the information? Do you not really know what a proposal looks like? Are you scared of like what the lease form might look? So I'll send all that stuff to them. I'm saying, hey, this is a blank lease if you want to look at it. And also, this is a big one and it's simple, is, dude, people are lazy. Like it is amazing if you just put in some extra effort and go the extra mile, how far that will get you with people. Like being early to a tour, being prepared for the tour, like making sure your keys work. And the examples I use in my industry is if you get there 15 minutes early, you open up, I'll use a warehouse as an example. It's open, the roll-up doors are open, the lights are on, you make sure there's nothing like in the office space that is gross. You go clear it and the person shows up, you're relaxed, you've got your brochures printed, you hand it to them, you introduce yourself versus they're waiting for you and you're late and you're fumbling with the keys and then you want to get the roll-up doors. They're panicked right off the bat. So just little things like that go such a long way. I mean, keeping your car clean. Like, somebody sees your car gross, if they're touring with you, like they're going to immediately be like, why is there a McDonald's wrapper on them? So a lot of little things add up a big way. And I just think, I think it's Dana White said this in a viral capacity. He goes, if you just work harder than most, like you'll just destroy everybody because people have become so soft.
How you do one thing's how you do all things. If your car's not clean, how do I trust you that you're going to make sure that my underwriting goes through cleanly?
Yeah.
And no, I agree with what you said with people lazy. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but it's funny. I've been dealing with salespeople for 11 years, managing sales teams, younger, older, all the things. And salespeople can kind of get needy and annoying sometimes. And annoying is not the right word, but it's funny because, there'll be an issue with a salesperson where it's like, I don't like this, I don't like that, or fix this or fix that. And it's funny because if you put it back on them, like totally, 100%, if you could just send me that email with a breakdown of exactly what you need, I'll get it done. 8 times out of 10, they won't send the email. And it's just like, wait, you're willing to complain about this challenge and this issue and make a big deal out about it and vent, but then I give you the opportunity for me to solve it, but I need you to do your part, and you're not even willing to do your part.
Yeah. And they're missing out on, like, if you really knew what would help them, you'd do that, and then you both would go make some money and help a client.
100%. Just a little bit of initiative goes a long way. Yeah. Erik, let's talk a little bit about investing in commercial real estate. So like I mentioned, I know a little bit about residential. What do people need to know about investing in commercial real estate for people that are looking to get started? Should they have a couple residential under their belt? Should they go straight to apartment complexes? Should they look at stuff like triple net? Like where can people get started that have this mystery over industrial and commercial real estate?
I don't think you need to do residential first. Like, people will ask if you're a broker, like, do you need to go do residential real estate first? The answer is no. Like, if you want to go do commercial, go do commercial. Again, the entry levels are often more expensive because you're dealing with commercial property, so it's more expensive. But there's buildings. I just sold one that was like $950,000. It was in Henderson, great industrial building. Your turnover cost is going to be significantly less than $1 million house, because you're not remodeling tile and all that. It's just carpet, like we call it, paint and carpet. There's different ways to get into it. One is there are syndication deals where there are really good companies that I personally invest in, where they find deals in whatever market they're in, and you can put however much money you want into those, and they've got different business plans with that property, whether your money's going to be tied up for 3 to 5 years, and then when they sell it, you'll make your money there, or they'll start doing like revenue sharing stuff where you'll start getting part of the rent check.
And that's more on the passive side, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You just write a check and you let them run with it. So those, I've had some good experience with those, but I also have known those people on the broker side. So I've sold them deals and I saw how they operated, and I was like, I'm comfortable with these people having some of my money. I'm invested in stuff in California and Arizona with the same company because I just like the 2 guys who run it. They're ethical, which is my number one thing. I've never heard them say like, hey, like we could do this and just don't tell the other guy, because they probably won't find out. Like, that is an immediately like red flag. Because if they'll do it to somebody else, they'll do it to me. One thing is a lot of people own businesses. They're entrepreneurs. There's a lot of good programs to buy a building where you're your own tenant, or you buy it, your company buys it. So like an SBA loan, if it's under $5 million, you've been in business for more than 2 years, and you occupy more than 51% of the building, you can go buy a building with an SBA loan as little as like 10% down. So say this 4,200 square foot building I just bought, you're a contractor. You could, go buy it with 10% down, and then you have a mortgage on it, and then hopefully in 10 years the value of the building's gone up and you've paid the principal down quite a bit, or it's paid off. And then a play that I see a lot of times when people retire is they sell their business, keep the building, and whoever buys the business just rents the building back from them. So syndication's a good way, or buy a building that you're going to use. You see a lot of like people in the medical industry will buy a building that they use. So if you own any kind of business, like call your bank and ask them about SBA deals, because that's a good way where you're like an investor and a tenant. You might as well be paying yourself versus somebody else getting that money. But I mean, there's commercial investments that I've done as little as like $800,000. Like if you go on like loopnet.com and you start searching commercial space, you'll be surprised what you'll find. So I think it's also important that you don't invest in something you don't understand, which is kind of like the cardinal rule across the board. But I'll get clients, they'll be like, hey, I found this building outside of like Nashville. And I'm like, I don't know anything about Nashville. I've been there once as a tourist. But if you don't know that market and you don't understand it, or you don't have somebody there you can trust, like don't let the price point get you excited, because there's a reason it's that price point. And I also like simple. Like when you invest in something, like sexy might have a higher ROI, but simple and steady over the long run is going to be a lot better. So, I like office buildings. My personal favorite is industrial. Buy it in a good part of town, even if you maybe pay a little bit more than an area where you have to do a bunch of TI stuff with. But contractors are actually a lot of big investors too, because they can buy a building and their cost to fix it up is a lot less. But I think you just need to keep an eye out, and maybe you partner with somebody that has done it before. Like, I don't know, maybe you have a rich uncle or something, and you could just be like, hey, if you buy a building, can I be involved? Like, even if you're, like I said, in one of the deals that I was first in, I was like less than 1%. The learning experience I got from the guy who structured it was massive, because I saw how he did the entities, how he did the loan, how he handled the taxes, like that kind of stuff. So short answer, no, you don't need to do commercial or residential before you do commercial. And there's a bunch of different ways you can get into it.
Yeah, and I say that rule that you just said is probably great for any industry, where it's like partner with people that have more experience than you in that specific space. Even if you have to give up some margins, or maybe you bring some more money to the table than they are and they get more equity, the value that you're going to get from the education through that process, and you're not doing it all by yourself, then you can go do 5, 10, 15, 20 deals. I did have a question. So in residential real estate, right, there's all these certain things right now. You get the house hacking, you get the burr. Is there something like that in commercial, or would the house hacking in ideal would be if you own a business and you're already in a building, just buying that building so you're renting it to yourself? Is there anything like that where an investor can get in and maybe minimize some of their risk if they're already in some type of office space or building or something like that?
Well, as far as like mitigating risk, I always reference, like, if you're your own tenant and you know what your business is doing, like, yeah, you're a little more secure than somebody, dependent on them giving you a rent check. There's a guy I had on my podcast. His name's Toby Mathis. He's an attorney, but he does a lot of content on asset protection and how you structure, like, your entities with taxes, and then doing your depreciation and cost segregation and all that stuff.
All the fun stuff.
So there is a million ways where, like, just the initial investment is not how you're like, there's what's the term I'm looking of? There's like bonuses that come along with buying certain buildings. So I guess I don't quite have an answer for you on that. My biggest thing though is like the I don't know, let's say you're going to buy $1 million, you're going to spend it, you've got $1 million and you're going to go buy 2 or 3 rental houses. Like, I have an industrial building that's right around the corner from the studio for sale. It's like a 6,000-foot building. It's got a couple hundred square feet of office. The owner, to rehab it, the tenant just moved out. He's doing paint and flooring. Like, his turnover cost is less than $5,000. Like, that building you could go buy with probably, close to $1 million down, and it would rent in 2 minutes, because it's got a really good, like, the checklist. It's got the power and fenced yard, and the office is a great layout. So I just a single tenant industrial building like that is a great, like, property to buy.
Love it. You've been doing real estate for a really long time, 2 decades. I've been doing solar for a decade, and it feels like a lifetime. You've been doing it for 2 decades. A term I hear a lot in the sales profession, whether you're leading team, solar, real estate, whatever, timeshares, life insurance, is burnout. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm burnt out. I just don't have the motivation or inspiration anymore. What do you say to that? Do you believe in burnout, and how do you avoid that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I've had that myself, where a couple times where I'm like, maybe I should go be like a commercial pilot or something, like, go try something different. I think it's really important to have 2 things in your life that kind of help you stay, I don't want to say balanced, but to make you happy. Something you can do maybe smaller that's regular, like, I don't know, the gym. Like, I go to a CrossFit gym where, like, literally one of my good friends is the owner. So, like, I'm just working out with my friends. I do that probably 3 or 4 days a week, and I'm in a great mood when I leave. You need to have something that, like, resets you and brings you joy. I also, I ride motorcycles. I have a dirt bike and road bike, and I've got different groups that I ride with. I can go hop on my dirt bike and go check the mail, and I'm immediately in a better mood. So if you don't have anything like that in your life, find something. Yoga, like, I go to a really cool church. That is a big part of, like, my keeping me grounded and in a good mood, really. And, like, work with people that you enjoy working with. Like, if you're in an office that's toxic, or, like, clients that are toxic, like, just get rid of them, change it up. Maybe fire that client because they're taking energy from you that you could be spending on a client that you really like doing. And also, like, reward yourself. I know we talked about, like, the debt thing, but if there's a trip you really want to do, or maybe your goal to buy a car, like, get really intentional about it. Like, make it real. Like, I don't know, if you want to go to some state or country, like book it, and you get motivated because it starts firing different. So really, if you're close to being burnt out, have something in your life that brings you joy, and have a really cool goal that you might not think is obtainable, but it really is. Like, I travel a ton, And people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, I just started doing it. And like when I got home, I realized I would do 10, 12-hour days, but I'd be gone for a week. So like the time worked itself out. And it's just I was like, I really want to go, and it'll work itself out. And it did. So anyways, yeah, have a big goal and have something that makes you happy.
I agree, dude. Traveling is so important. I feel like if you don't have, I try and have quarterly trips. I do big trips, but really just like 2 to 3 day quarterly trips with my fiance every quarter, because I think you need those things to look forward to, because if not, you're not as intentional when you're working. Most people, they're thinking about work when they're on vacation, and they're thinking about vacation when they're at work, because they don't have their schedule set up in a way where they have certain boundaries where they know, okay, I got to grind for these next couple months, but then we're taking this awesome trip to Four Seasons, or then we're going to make sure to get that rental car and that dinner that we've really been wanting to on vacation. I think it's super important. And it also puts you in a better perspective. If perspective was how we started this podcast. That's actually, I have a word of the year every year. Last year was growth. This year's perspective, and nothing helps reframe my perspective like traveling out of country for over 5 or 6 days, because I get back and I am so grateful for my routine. I'm so grateful for all the problems going on in my business. I'm so grateful for everything, because I've taken myself out of my familiarity and I've kind of broken my pattern a little bit. So when I get back, I'm fresh, ready to rock and roll, and fired up.
Yeah, you get a lot of really cool ideas when you're like because like you said, it's a different perspective. Like you'll see something that is totally unrelated to your business, and you're like, oh, I could do this to, maybe close this deal, or training differently, or that's part of the reason I travel so much.
Love it, dude. What do you feel like? So you've been doing real estate for a really long time. You've been in sales and business and investing. Do you feel like there was something that you wish you knew when you first started? Maybe a concept, maybe a rule, an ideal that you feel like would have accelerated your progress and success if you knew it now?
Yeah, it's knowing what questions to ask for, like your mentor when you're brand new into a business. The guy who got me into this business introduced me to a lot of cool people, successful people, but he was not structured in a way where you're long-term in this business. He was doing it pre-2008. He worked really hard. He ran around, but he didn't do the right fundamentals. So somebody who teaches you the fundamentals. So I was with him for years. I probably should have only been there for 2 years. And then I didn't realize that till I went to my next brokerage. And the guy was like, this is a CRM, and this is how we co-call, and like, this is how you take notes, and this is how you underwrite a property. And I was like, oh my, like, this is crazy. And that leveled my income up. It leveled my client, the type of clients I worked with. So yeah, kind of wishing I knew like what to look for in like a mentor or who's going to teach you. And I was very narrow-minded because I was like the only agent at that brokerage, and I kind of had carte blanche to do what I wanted to. And in reality, I needed the opposite. I needed somebody over my shoulder, seeing if I was making phone calls. Like I didn't want the structure and the boss, I guess. I didn't want a boss. And when I went and had that kind of like boss broker, I guess, who was more, daily meetings on how many calls you made and what's your like listing presentations amount and that kind of stuff, it works. So like, maybe being open-minded to, working somewhere you wouldn't be. And also that whole like investing a little bit of what you make early on. I think that's super important. Even if you're making $1,000 a month, take $50 of that and get in the habit of putting it into a mutual fund or an index fund or something.
Yeah. How do you know when it's time to move on, whether that's to a new brokerage, whether it's to a new opportunity? Because I think people are on the extremes. Either you got the serial entrepreneurs that are doing solar, drop shipping, commercial real estate, Forex, and crypto investing all at the same time and not doing well at any of them. Or you have the people that maybe hang on to a certain opportunity, to a certain job, to a certain position, to a certain relationship way too long. Where is that sweet spot where it's, I'm not giving up on the thing that I committed to. I'm moving on because it's what I need to do at this point.
Dude, I had this conversation last night with one of my biggest clients who's also become one of my closest friends. And this is something we talk about. Dude, your gut feeling knows. You need to listen to yourself. In my world, I'll say, it's God telling me it's time to move on or something. And dude, your gut feeling is like, your intuition is really powerful. So you're like, initial reaction, like that's the answer. And then when you have to justify like why it's not the reason to switch or like something, you Like if you hate your job and you're like looking at other positions every night, like switch jobs. Like,
Indicator.
But then they're like, hey, I have a steady job. I've been here for a few years. I have good insurance. They justify it. Like, I mean, maybe again, if you have a lot of responsibilities, you need to deal with that. But if you have the ability to make a switch and your gut keeps telling you that, dude, that's something telling you you need to pull the trigger and do something to change it up. That could be changing your team in your office. That could be going solo. Like, just start doing something to change it up. But dude, your gut knows, and you need to listen to your gut.
I agree, dude. The intuition is everything. And I think too many people don't listen to their gut because they're so distracted by all the noise, and they never put themselves in a position to get quiet and actually listen to their internal voice versus all the noise from social media and external pressures and circumstances. So that's some sound advice. Get quiet.
This is another one I was talking with my friend about too. Put your phone away, go into a room where there's nothing going on, and just a pen and paper and just start writing. It could be anything, like something you want or a business plan for next year, a trip. Like just start writing down and just write till your hand has a cramp or whatever. Just journal and go back and read that. And that in itself will give you more insight to what you're supposed to do than you could ever anticipate or imagine.
It's a form of meditation.
It 100%. I do it with prayer. I actually write out, like when I pray, I'll actually write down things I'm grateful for and things like you might need some guidance on or something. And when you look at it when you're done, you're kind of like, oh, like, and you see it on paper, you're like, I was thinking, oh, my day was going like really bad. But then I see it. I was like, dude, I had a great day. Like I work at a good company. Like I was in a fender bender, but it was minor. And the guy who got out immediately was just like, hey, I'm happy nobody was hurt. Not a big deal. Like, let's exchange information. I was like, dude, thank you for being so like positive about this. So just really being, that attitude of gratitude, I think is important. But I don't know. I that's a big tool for me as I write things down. And I really try to listen to my gut feeling, because if I don't, it always comes back to bite me in the ass.
100%. 100%. Erik, you've been awesome, dude. Thank you so much. Where can the viewers find you? How can they get plugged in? Maybe there's an investor. Maybe someone just wants to learn more about the real estate industry.
All my handles on Twitter or X and Instagram are Erik T. Sexton. And if you just Google Erik Sexton commercial real estate, all my stuff will pop up.
Love it. My last question for you, dude, before we close out. What do you feel like is the best lesson, advice, or piece of information that you've ever received?
This is one that I love. You only get one life, and if there's something you really want to do, dude, just get after it, because life is short, and life will go on. I said I travel a lot. I've done 6 international trips this year, and I have one more planned before Christmas, and I'm still going to be like have a good professional year. So if there's something you want to do, book it. Do something to make it real, because you're going to look back and go, wait a minute, another year's gone by.
Love it, dude. YOLO.
YOLO, that's right. That's a good one. Thanks for having me.
Erik, thank you so much. Guys, if you like the episode, comment, like, subscribe. We'll see you next week. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Peace.